darkness is not an affirmative force. It simply reoccupies the space vacated by the light.
This is the Hamilton Corner on American Family Radio
and Urban Family Talk.
It should be uncomfortable for a believer to live as a hypocrite.
Delivering people out of the bondage of mainstream media
and the philosophies of this world.
God has called you and me to be his ambassadors, even in this dark moment. Let's not miss our moment.
And now, the Hamilton Corner.
Good evening. Welcome to the Hamilton Corner here on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. I'm your host, Abraham Hamilton III, and I am so excited to join you this evening. As most of you are making your way from your part-time jobs to your full-time jobs, I just want to encourage you, as I always do, to make sure that we are not neglecting our families in an effort to be fruitful and faithful in other areas in our lives, but that we make sure that our families are served well. And let me start the program off today by first of all saying thank you to all of you who have come alongside us in our efforts to serve these children in Mumbai, India, in these red light districts. We've been talking this entire weekend, last week, about the sex trafficking that many of the children are subjected to there, predominantly girls, but it includes little boys too, as young as 8 years old, 7 years old in some cases. And I have to tell you thank you, because we had a goal when we started this campaign of providing, about 14,000 days of safety. And I have to tell you that with your help and your support, we have exceeded that goal by leaps and bounds. When I came in early this morning, the total number of days of safety that have been provided was over 22,000. Folks, that is phenomenal. That is phenomenal. This is a perfect example of what I say all the time, that people who love Jesus Christ are the most compassionate, the most caring, and the most giving people in the world. That's just a fact. And you prove it daily in your daily lives, and things like this are just proof positive of that fact. Most of you who've supported us in this endeavor will never go to India yourselves. We'll never see these people on this side of eternity. But you nevertheless allow the Lord to fill you with compassion to provide for the needs of others. And I said this earlier this week, and I'll say it again now. Believe you me, that many of these children that you have dug deep to support, that though you may not see them on this side of eternity, you will most likely see them when we get to glory. And I'm excited about that. I'm excited about that. This is phenomenal. This is so encouraging when people say things, and we recognize the darkness that's mounting in our world, things that are happening. But there are good people. There are godly people and loving people in this world. And I tell you that I believe the Hamilton Corner audience, the American Family Radio audience, the Urban Family Talk audience is the most giving and compassionate there is in our country. And so I just want to give you a heartfelt thank you for continuing the work there, expanding the work. Hundreds of thousands of children still need to be rescued. And through your diligence, partnering with us, we're going to be able to expand our ministerial efforts in Mumbai, India. And so thank you so much for doing that. Well, we'll now turn to the Word of God. In 2 Chronicles, we're going to talk about a little bit about King Uzziah. 2 Chronicles, chapter 26. I'm going to start right at about verse 13. And I'm going to read all the way to verse 20. And when we talk about King Uzziah, in terms of his prominence as a national geopolitical leader and the superpower status that Israel reached under his authority, the reality is Uzziah's, the largesse of his reign is right up there with David and Solomon. If you had a Mount Rushmore of Israelite kings in terms of their national prominence, you'd probably have David, Solomon, and Uzziah all together. He had all kind of wealth, expansive building programs during his reign as king. The nations of the world didn't want any problems with Israel. You had other nations paying tribute to the nation of Israel because of the impact and the largesse of Uzziah's reign. And it was so expansive when, for example, Isaiah writes in chapter 6 of his prophetic book, in the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord. There's some Hebrew scripture expositors say that the reason why Isaiah writes about seeing the Lord in the year that King Uzziah dies was because King Uzziah cast such a broad shadow, that he was such a preeminent figure in Israel that many of the Israelites had a hard time seeing Yahweh because they saw Uzziah so prominently. And so this is the backdrop of what we're going to talk about here. And I'm going to highlight one portion in the portion of scriptures that we reread, but I would encourage you to go back and read the entirety of chapter 26, because the scriptures that precede where I'm going to pick up right now discuss some of his building programs and discuss some of the military innovations and the things that had him regarded as such a transcendent geopolitical leader. Now, having said that, here we go. 2 Chronicles chapter 26, verse 13. Here we go. Under their command, talking about the heads of Uzziah's army, under their command was an army of 307,500 soldiers who could make war with mighty power to help the king against the enemy. And Uzziah prepared for all the army shields, spears, helmets, coats of mail, bows, and stones for slinging. Check this out, verse 15. In Jerusalem, he made machines invented by skillful men to be on the towers and the corners to shoot arrows and great stones. And his fame spread far, for he was marvelously helped till he was strong. Verse 16, but when he was strong, he grew proud to his destruction. For he was unfaithful to the Lord his God, and entered the temple of the Lord to burn incense on the altar of incense. But Azariah the priest went in after him, with 80 priests of the Lord, who were men of valor. And they withstood King Uzziah, and said to him, it is not for you, Uzziah, to burn incense to the Lord, but for the priests, the sons of Aaron, who are consecrated to burn incense. Go out of the sanctuary, for you have done wrong, and it will bring you no honor from the Lord God. Then Uzziah was angry. Now he had a censer in his hand to burn incense, and when he became angry with the priests, leprosy broke out on his forehead in the presence of the priests in the house of the Lord by the altar of incense. And Azariah, the chief priest, and all the priests looked at him, and behold, he was leprous in his forehead, and they rushed him out quickly, and he himself hurried to go out, because the Lord had struck him. Now you get a flavor for what type of king Uzziah was, because right in verse 14 and 15, it talks about how Uzziah provided his military, which the Bible tells us is 307,500 men. At this time in history, you have 300,000 skillful warriors who exist for no reason other than to fight the enemies of the king, of King Uzziah. And the Bible tells us how he made machines and created by skillful inventors, where he added the modern invention at that time of catapults to the towers of the walls of Israel. I mean, this is a transcendent figure, but the Bible gives us this transitory reality right there at the end of verse 15 when it says that he was marvelously helped till he was strong. Now, what does that mean? Uzziah became king in Israel when he was a little boy. The Bible tells us this earlier. He was 16 years old when he became king. He reigned for 15 years. And Uzziah set himself to seek God, the Bible tells us, during the days of Zechariah. You see, when the boy king Uzziah came into power, he had a spiritual mentor who aided him and served him. But the Bible tells us that Uzziah's commitment to the Lord early on wasn't necessarily his own heartfelt commitment, but it was the product of having a mentor leading and guiding him. But once that mentor expired, Uzziah saw himself now as strong in his own eyes. And at the pinnacle of this self-deception, Uzziah exceeded the boundaries, the jurisdiction that were established for the king. And though he was this transcendent geopolitical figure, this political king of Israel, he said, but that's not enough for me. I want the priesthood. I want the priesthood. And when he sought to do that, and you have to see this picture, he goes into the temple. The Bible tells us that the high priest at the time, Azariah, saw him and went in after him. And 80 strong men of God followed him and confronted Uzziah as he transgressed the boundaries. He said, you are the king, but this temple is outside of your jurisdiction. You don't belong here, folks. These men, this chief priest, Azariah first, and these 80 men literally were taking their own lives in their hands by confronting Uzziah. Why? Uzziah is the king with an army of over 300,000 soldiers. by confronting the king and telling them the way that Nathan told David, you are the man, the king could have said, off with your head. And in fact, the Bible tells us when the confrontation went down, King Uzziah didn't humbly and passively say, oh, you're right, Azariah. I've exceeded my boundaries. No, the Bible says he got hot. He got angry. So imagine what would have happened if Azariah went in there by himself without the 80 men backing him up. And then imagine what would have happened if when the 80 men go in there, the king calls his soldiers to deal with it. Now, why am I pointing this out? When I was reading this and studying these passages, the question I have for us today, do we have valiant men and women of God who are willing to, even at the risk of our own lives, to stand against the wickedness in our day? You know, when the Bible talks about these priests being 80 men of valor, 80 strong men, I don't think this is a statement merely discussing their physical acumen. I think their valor was tied into them being fully invested into being worshipers of Yahweh and having their character forged to such a degree to where in their hearts they say, for God I live and for God I'll die. Having the same type of posture that Martin Luther had when he was brought before the Diet of Worms and demanded to recant his statements that salvation is by grace through faith alone. Recant. And Martin Luther says, I cannot go against conscience. It's neither right nor safe. I've said what I've said. Here I stand. God help me. Folks, we need a healthy heaping of this in our day. You know, the unfortunate reality is that we have men and women who want to be able to stand in these, what I call showing up moments, these public showing up moments. But the unfortunate reality is we fail too frequently, so frequently, in our private showing up moments. You know, we won't have the strength that's necessary to confront King Uzziah when they violate God's standards if we are bound in pornography addictions. We won't be able to stand, you know, against King Uzziah who violate God's standards when the truth is in our private lives, we have problems telling the truth. We lie. Let me be clear. We tell lies on such a regular basis. We won't be able to stand in these public showing up moments when in a regular basis we are afraid of men's faces. These men put their very lives on the line, but some of us can't even stand having a few negative comments on Twitter, having a few negative comments on Facebook. And I'm not saying this in an effort to condemn. The reason why I'm saying this is to invite us to have an adjustment in our internal disposition to where we say, man, God is far more important than any of this. Far more important than any of this. The valor that the high priest Azariah and these 80 strong priests had wasn't forged at the moment when Uzziah entered the temple. That was created long beforehand. Before they ever had the opportunity to confront Uzziah, these priests had already said, for Christ I live, for Yahweh I live, and for Yahweh I die. And in this day and age, the things that are coming at the body of Christ today, efforts to divide the bride, efforts to move the church away from sound doctrine, the orthodoxy of Scripture. We need valiant men and women of God to say, listen, you may have your opinion, but where your opinion violates the word of God, your opinion must fall.
Shining light into the darkness. This is the Hamilton Corner on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Welcome back to the Hamilton Corner here on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. My goodness. So, oh my gosh. This morning, the president announced that he will sign a national declaration of emergency to build the border wall on the American southern border, which, you know, I've said before, in terms of the constitutional authority, I think that the president clearly has that authority based on the National Emergency Powers Act of 1976. It was an act duly passed by Congress, so I believe he has that authority. My only concern with it was the precedent that it sets that could allow, I won't say it could allow, that some will perceive as allowing subsequent administrations to declare national emergencies for anything that they wish. Now, I believe, this is my opinion, I believe that there are sufficient limitations in the legislation, I'm talking about the National Emergency Powers Act of 1976, that would allow for those subsequent administrations to be reined in. But part of my concern is the regressivism that permeates the American legal judiciary, the federal judiciary, and how they would perceive that going forward. Nevertheless, I do think the president has that authority. Now, what concerns me beyond the declaration of national emergency is this spending bill. I told you guys yesterday that over 1,000-page bill overnight that the senators voted 83-16 to pass. No way they read that bill. No way they read the bill. And I know they have it because between yesterday and today's program, I've been digging a little more, finding more information that is prevalent in this bill that there's no way the president should sign this. And the Republicans and Mitch McConnell, now, I'm an equal opportunity truth teller. I applauded Mitch McConnell, the slippery eel. I applauded him, or some call him the turtle, when he called for a vote on the new Green Deal, the Green New Deal. I applauded him. Mitch McConnell and the Republicans in the Senate should be ashamed of themselves for passing this spending bill. I told you guys yesterday, House Joint Resolution 31, Section 224A, literally guts ICE's ability to detain, to deport, and to even initiate deportation proceedings on illegal aliens if they happen to be accompanied by a minor illegal alien child. If they have a child with them, this bill, the spending bill, Section 224A of this spending bill, would prohibit them from being able to do that. And not only pursuant to this act, but it prohibits ICE from being able to use any money federally collected, any tax dollars to initiate deportation proceedings for people who are with minor children, those who are sponsors of minor children for, legal immigration purposes down the line, or even potential sponsors. It goes even as far as to make it illegal to initiate deportation procedures for people who are in the household of a minor or in the household of a sponsor or a potential sponsor. Folks, that is anybody. That is anybody. And that's what this bill does. But even more than that, between yesterday's program, because it takes some time to digest over 1,000 pages, I have some choice hits for you. So the measure, you guys are going to flip. And I'm going to tell you, I tweeted to the president on this. I told you I would. I sent him some messages. I pray that he heeds what I'm saying to you. And I invite everybody that are listeners to the Hamilton Corner to call the White House, to send emails to the White House, to tweet at POTUS and at Real Donald Trump to say, please do not sign this spending bill. Veto this bill. Because look what the bill does. It gives $1.375 billion to build border fencing. But of course, as you can expect it, they have hitches. They have catches in the deal. Because you have to think, wait a minute, Nancy Pelosi and the regressives in the Democrat Party were saying they wouldn't give President Trump $1 for a wall. They're not giving $1. So now all of a sudden we'll make them give money. One, you just heard me tell you, it guts ICE's ability to deport illegal aliens. ICE, in the head of the Department of Homeland Security, can't use any money for deportation in the parameters that I just described. Folks, that's DACA on steroids. Who needs DACA, which I told you yesterday? DACA was a federal executive order. This is congressional statute, which in terms of legality, congressional statutes have more weight than executive orders. But in addition to this, the $1.375 billion that would be given to the president to build a wall only allows him to erect a wall in the Rio Grande Valley. Not a wall, only in this particular sector. And let me let you in on the additional catches. It only allows the president to erect a wall in the Rio Grande Valley if the citizens in the Rio Grande Valley vote for the wall. Yeah. So not only does it only give $1.375 billion, but you're only going to have a wall if the people in the Rio Grande Valley vote for it. That is effectively granting veto power over the southern border wall to the citizens of this area. Now, I obviously believe in our constitutional republic, but this is federal executive authority. The citizens should not be the ones to make this call. The citizens of the Rio Grande Valley shouldn't be the ones to make this call. Oh, and by the way, in case you're wondering, because I know some of you are, don't you know that the Rio Grande Valley in the state of Texas went overwhelmingly for Hillary Clinton in the 2016 election? So the Democrats in Congress know that the Rio Grande Valley is never going to vote for a wall. So you have literally a bill that would congressionally enshrine DACA on steroids in exchange for money given to the president to build a wall that would never be agreed to by the citizens of the only area that they would be allowed to build a wall. And this is why this is additionally problematic. Because if the president were to grant, or as he announced this morning, if the president goes forward with the national emergency declaration, he is tying his own hands with congressional statute to where he is ceding to limiting his own ability to construct a wall. Because again, there will be a weighing of the executive action taken by the president against the congressional action. So my advice to the president, as you've declared that you're going to sign the national emergency declaration, veto this bill. Because there's no way your objectives with the national emergency declaration are going to be satisfied if this bill is signed into law. You want to know what else is in the bill? Oh, sure, I'll tell you some more. It reduced this number of beds that are available to ICE to detain illegal aliens by 10,000 beds. Yeah. You know, 10,000 less people are able to be detained by ICE. Yeah. 10,000 less. Yet the Republicans signed off on this. Folks, this is a travesty. This is a travesty. This bill is trash. This is trash. And you want to see something that's funny? This same bill, secures more than $3.1 billion for money for foreign health services. So you mean you tell me you're going to double the money that you're giving the president for the wall? You'll give twice that amount of money for foreign health services. Man, this bill is absolute trash. Absolute trash. You wonder why. What's the rush? Why are they passing this bill, writing this bill under dark of night, and then you write it one night and the next morning you got to vote on it? None of you guys read that bill. None of you. And now you want to put the president in this position. Well, the president said he would sign it if we would support his national emergency, and he hadn't even read the bill. President Trump vetoed this bill. Vetoed this bill. Again, I am asking every one of you who are listening to this program, if you have social media, you have Facebook, you have Twitter, send a message to the president. We know he reads social media. Let him know. Listen, if veto this bill, you declare the national emergency, the American people will stand behind you. This is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. The bill reduces the number of beds available to ICE to detain illegal aliens. This is sad, man. This is sad. The bill also has a provision that says the Department of Homeland Security Secretary cannot increase the amount of funding for building a wall. Why would you agree to a bill that ties your hands like that? Why would you agree to that? That's insane. That's insane. Again, this bill also, it prohibits the ability to use a concrete wall. Remember the prototypes that the president floated out there? Gone. The only opportunity, the only wall he could use, again, only in the Rio Grande Valley, would be the steel bollard design. Why would you limit yourself in that fashion? Why would you limit yourself in that fashion? Then it explicitly, this spending bill lists explicitly areas where the president is absolutely prohibited from building a wall. Absolutely prohibited. Folks, this is terrible. This is terrible. All of this is egregious, but the most egregious is this. I read it yesterday. I know I did, but I want to read this again in case some people missed yesterday's program. I'm going to read the exact text of the legislation from House Joint Resolution 31, Section 224A. Here we go. Quote, none of the funds provided by this act or any other act or provided from any accounts in the Treasury of the United States derived by the collection of fees which is taxes, by the way. So saying the federal government, the Department of Homeland Security, and Immigration and Customs Enforcement cannot use any tax dollars derived by the collection of fees available to the components funded by this act may be used by the Secretary of Homeland Security to place in detention, remove, refer for a decision whether to initiate removal proceedings, or initiate removal proceedings against a sponsor, a potential sponsor, or member of a household of a sponsor or potential sponsor of an unaccompanied alien child as defined in Section 462G of the Homeland Security Act of 2002, 6 U.S.C. Section 279G. Folks, it is literally saying that the Department of Homeland Security and Immigration and Customs Enforcement cannot use any tax dollars to detain, remove, or refer for a decision to remove or initiate removal proceedings against a sponsor, potential sponsor, or a member of a household of a potential sponsor. Folks, this is crazy. This is crazy. And you wonder why. Man, all of a sudden the Democrats want to give some money for the wall. This is why. Because they know if the president signs this legislation, and I should have pulled it up, the numbers of the 83 senators who voted, I'm going to pull that list up, and I'm going to post it on social media. I don't know when I'll be able to get to it because I have a couple other things I have to do, but I'm going to post it. The Republicans who went along with this should be ashamed of themselves. This is ridiculous. This is the type of legislation that's presented when the progressives believe that the president has no other bullets in his gun. There's nothing else he can do. We have him over a barrel. He has no choice but to sign this. No, you have a choice. You have a choice, Mr. President. Do not sign this trash. If I was a president, and I hope you're listening to me, the people in the White House, I would encourage you to take out every page in this bill that is objectionable. And first of all, tell the media and tell the Congress members, you guys are going to have to wait until we've read all these pages in this bill. Ain't no way I'm going to sign a 1,000-some-odd page bill and we haven't had the chance to read it. Second thing he should do, get a big Sharpie like you like to sign the executive orders and things with. In every page that has objectionable provisions in the bill, the president should take it out, highlight the page, and sign his name next to it and said, this is why I cannot sign this bill. You know, where you can effectively utilize a line item veto by telling the Congress and the American people exactly what provisions of the bill you find objectionable. And then take pictures of them and post them on Twitter and post them on Facebook and post them on the White House's website and say, these are the provisions of this legislation that prohibit me from being able to sign this bill. The American people knew what I campaigned on, and they elected me to become their president. The Congress members knew what our priorities and our objectives were in order to pass a spending bill. If these provisions are removed from this bill, I can sign this bill and we can go forward with keeping the government open. However, the bill as currently drafted is an offense and an affront to the American people, and I will not be made complicit with the shenanigans that some of our Congress members are trying to pull on the American people. That's what I would do if I was president. And that is what I encourage the president of the United States to do. All of this foolishness, man. You're going to go behind closed doors and write these bills and demand a signature? Man, that is rank and abject foolishness. And I'm sick of it. I'm sick of it. And I said this yesterday, the Senate has a 72-hour rule exactly for this reason, that once a bill is completed, before the senators would have to vote on it, they have 72 hours for them and their staffs to review it. And this is why. But 83 senators have already gone on record in support of this. Now, I understand. I don't agree, but I understand why Democrats would support it. But I certainly don't understand why Republicans would support this. Folks, this is disgusting. This is why I say, and I believe this with all my heart, I believe every Christian at this stage, we should make people who are campaigning for office work for our votes. There should be nobody, I don't care what party you're in, that you should be able to say, well, I know for a fact I'm going to get their votes. I've said many times long ago that I believe the Democrat Party conducts themselves in such a fashion where they take for granted the vote of people with darker skin color. Why? Because they get 90+% of the vote in every election. I believe in many ways the Republican Party treats Christians the exact same way. And I think the time has come for us to not be a part of any ideological or political plantation and to say, listen, we stand on the word of God. We believe in the founding of this constitutional republic. We believe in the liberty and freedom of this country. And so if you want our vote, you got to earn it, Jack. Because I'm sick of these Republicans getting to Washington, D.C. and conducting themselves as Republicrats. This is why I tell you repeatedly that regressivism is a bipartisan institution. Republicans that passed, that voted in favor of this legislation should be ashamed of themselves. Ashamed of themselves. We are literally at the juncture where the only one primarily in D.C. that is fighting for the American people is President Trump. And in many cases, he's fighting against the Republican Party. And this is despicable. Mr. President, veto this bill.
The Hamilton Corner podcast and one-minute commentaries are available at afr.net and urbanfamilytalk.com. Back to the Hamilton Corner on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Welcome back to the Hamilton Corner here in American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. You know, where this thing is derailed, it's clear, and there's some news outlets even reporting this, that President Trump was basically fed false information by Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell told the president, there are no landmines in this bill. There's nothing objectionable in this bill. Listen, and listen to me well. You cannot trust Mitch McConnell. He's a shrewd tactician in the Senate, but he's not trustworthy. He's not. He is not trustworthy. So, again, in addition to vetoing this bill, Mr. President, you and your staff, your team has to come to the table and realize Mitch McConnell's not trustworthy. I'm just telling you. Now I'm going to move on, and I hadn't discussed this particular topic on the program yet because I am one of these people. I am not interested in being the first, with breaking news, so to speak. I want to make sure when I'm talking about something, I at least know what I'm talking about. You see, I'm not like Congress. I'm not going to vote for a bill I haven't read. Jeez, man. This Jussie Smollett story, my goodness, out of Chicago. He's on the Fox show Empire, who discussed himself being attacked. And I'm going to refresh your memory concerning the allegations made there. But I want to start with some audio for you from, what's the name? It is WCAL 9 in Chicago, a local news report. Please play the audio, Jeff.
More than 2 weeks after Empire actor Jussie Smollett claimed he was viciously attacked in Chicago by racist Trump supporters. According to sources, police raided the home of two persons of interest last night and took evidence, including bleach, which is what Smollett claimed the attackers poured on him, and a script from Empire. Family members tell our Chicago affiliate the two Nigerian men appeared as extras on the show. In an interview that aired on Good Morning America this morning, Smollett retold the story of his attack.
They called me I noticed the rope around my neck and I started screaming.
He also addressed the skepticism about his story.
If I had said it was a Muslim or a Mexican or someone black, I feel like the doubters would have supported me a lot more.
And even got emotional as he talked about the prospect of never finding the attackers.
I said, I just want them to find them. And she said, sweetie, they're not gonna find them. That just made me so angry because, so I'm just gonna be left here with this?
Again, Chicago police say reports that the attack is a hoax are unconfirmed by detectives.
Unconfirmed by detectives. Now, what are some of the details of the allegation? According to Jussie Smollett, he says while walking back from a subway at 2 a.m. on a freezing cold Chicago night, walking back from Subway, getting a sandwich, he was suddenly attacked by two racist assailants. He said they assaulted him, poured mysterious chemical or bleach on him, tied a rope around his neck, and shouted, "This is MAGA country." And let me go on with the allegations. And he said that he also hurled several anti-black and anti-gay slurs at him. Smollett claimed that he fought off his attackers and made it home. And he also took a selfie in what was originally described as him being in the hospital that showed a cut on his face. And it's not clear. He seemed like he may have had swollen lips. Now, when I first heard that story, I thought to myself, that sounds a little fishy. Oh, I left out the fact that Smollett said that a week prior, he received a threat in the mail that referred to him and with a homophobic threat the week before, using letters cut out of a magazine. All right. When I first heard the story, I thought, And my immediate thought was, 2 a.m. and somebody's going to attack you and yell, this is MAGA country in Chicago, Illinois? You know, Barack Hussein's old stomping grounds. You know what I'm saying? Chicago? I don't think of Chicago as being MAGA country. Well, police department, the Chicago Police Department, then immediately asked for Jussie Smollett to give them his cell phone records, because he said that he immediately called his manager to discuss the attack. And so surely, that would help them narrow down the time period and everything. Well, it turns out now that some in the Chicago Police Department feel that this was a hoax. And there are sources that are reporting that not only was it a hoax, it was a hoax created by Jussie Smollett himself. The two suspects that the Chicago Police Department have that detained yesterday were Nigerian. On the day of the attack, they flew to Nigeria. They returned back to Chicago yesterday. They were extras on the Empire show. The sources also said that the reason why they believed that Smollett had created this attack hoax was to create national buzz for himself and national sympathy, because his character was going to soon be written off of the Fox show Empire. Now, the studio, Fox, has responded to those allegations saying that that's not true. But doesn't this story seem a little weird? Now, I'm going to dig into some of the things that, that to me make me go, First, I've said it already. Jussie Smollett said he walked from his house to Subway. All right. Chicago, in this area, and I believe the street that it's around is the Lower Wacker Drive. The area is populated primarily by homosexual individuals themselves and people with the permanent tan. Yet you're going to have some racist dudes out there with, yelling, this is MAGA country at 2 a.m. in Chicago. I may be a lot of things, but I'm not sure that many Chicagoans view their city as MAGA country. But I'll leave that to your consideration. Second, he said that they poured bleach on him. Well, the night that this happened, and these guys would have had to have been waiting outside, waiting for him at 2 a.m. This particular day, it was like sub 30 degrees, wind chill in Chicago. Bleach freezes at 19 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's sub 30 Fahrenheit, but the bleach isn't frozen. I don't know. Then, and this is the thing that's the kicker. So this area in Chicago is a city that has more cameras in it than almost any other city. And the police have been able to reconstruct Jussie Smollett's entire trek from his apartment to Subway, from Subway back to his apartment, except for 60 seconds. 60 seconds, Jussie Smollett goes out of frame, and he comes back in frame with a rope around his neck. And then after having just suffered, and I'm not going to say that, I don't know if you can get a beat down in 60 seconds. I've seen a lot of beat downs in my life, but but let's assume that you can have a tumultuous beatdown that would have you crying on television like you just heard on the audio. You think you would walk to your apartment with the rope still around your neck? The video shows Jussie Smollett walking back to his apartment with the rope still around his neck. Oh, and don't forget this. He has a Subway sandwich in his hand. So 2 dudes jumped on him, beat on him, tied a rope around his neck, poured bleach on him, but you still have your Subway sandwich? I'm not saying it could not happen, but I'm saying, is that very likely? That you just take the beatdown of all beatdowns and you still gonna have the Subway sandwich? And then to add insult to injury, Jussie Smollett's own neighbors don't believe him. His neighbors, their neighbors in the neighborhood are saying, that doesn't sound right, not in this neighborhood. There are not very many people in this neighborhood who have any antipathy toward homosexuals. And most of the people around here are black. So his own neighbors don't even believe his story. This is weird, man. This is weird. And then you have the whole deal with the phone records. And I understand you might have some things in your phone you don't want people to see. But why not if you're trying to catch the people that beat you up? Not to even mention that you see the scratch on his eye, and he originally reported that he took the selfie of him. He took the selfie from the hospital. It turns out Jussie Smollett never went to the hospital. He originally said that he had broken ribs. Turns out he later admitted, I never had broken ribs. I was bruised a little bit. No, I was bruised a bit. That's what he said. He was bruised a bit. So he even admitted that some of the stuff I said early on is not, because he's the one who said initially he had broken ribs. And he's the one who initially said he was taking the picture from the hospital. And it turns out, no, he didn't go to the hospital. Turns out, no, he doesn't have broken ribs. And he didn't call the police until he called the police, made contact with him at his apartment. When the police came to his apartment, he still had the rope around his neck. And I'm saying, okay, well, somebody would say, well, maybe he's trying to preserve the evidence. Well, if he's an evidence preserver, why wouldn't he let the police get the phone records in real time of when this all transpired? Man, look, I'll report, you decide. How about that? Whether or not you believe this is the deal. Soon after the attack, Jussie Smollett showed up in West Hollywood singing and dancing. Like, if you just had the tarnation beat out of you, you sore. Anybody who's ever had a broken rib or been injured from a beatdown, it takes a little bit of recovery time. But my man was like, nah, I was bruised, but I fought back. Like, what? And then talking about the neighbors who don't believe him, there is one neighbor in particular. His name is Ajin Muhammad, who lives in the same building that Jussie Smollett lives in. And he said this, quote, I don't believe it. Not around here. Half the people are gay and the other half are black, end quote. This is what the old neighbor said. So what do you think happened? Do you think this is a real attack or it's likely a hoax? And when you have the police saying things like, reports of this being a hoax are not confirmed. Folks, I'm just going to tell you, as a career prosecutor, police departments don't release those kind of statements unless they think something's fishy here. Something is fishy here. And let me be very serious on this note. I don't wish anybody harm. I don't care, if you are in a lifestyle that I don't agree with, that doesn't mean I want you to be harmed. I don't think anybody should be attacked. And if this man was attacked, I hope that his assailants are brought to justice. But at the same time, come on, this seems a little out there, doesn't it? Seems a little out there. So it seems more and more and more like this may be a hoax. If there's more evidence to come out, we'll see. And if it turns out that it's not a hoax, I will come back on this program and say, folks, here's the latest update. But based on this evidence, 2 a.m, who's going to hang out? And it's freezing cold. Remember, this is just, the whole polar vortex thing, right? Chicago, They're going to hang out at 2 a.m. and wait for him to come out. And the man walks home with his Subway sandwich. It's on video. He enters his building holding the sandwich. I've never seen anybody that they get a beat down while holding a sandwich in their hand and they keep the sandwich. Never seen that. Never heard of it. Moving on. I just, and then let me ask this question. Is how they describe the homophobia and the skin color-based bigotry as prevalent as some want us to believe it is, if they have to make up a story like that? The media wanted Nick Sandmann to be, this prejudiced, skin color-based partial bigot against Nathan Phillips, and oops, they were wrong. And I hadn't even said that Jussie Smollett is a virulent Trump hater. I mean, you just check out his Twitter feed. He hates Trump. I just can't imagine anybody hanging out in Chicago and yelling, "This is MAGA country," in Chicago. That's just weird. All right, a few minutes I have left. Originally, Amazon was going to create a new headquarters in New York City. They were calling it HQ2. But some socialists in New York didn't like it. One of them being Alexandria, one who uses her cortex only occasionally. AOC, Alexandria Occasional Cortex. That's what I call her. She celebrated. Yes, we stood up to big bad corporate America. We stood up to the richest man in the world. And now residents and business owners in New York are angry. Why is that? Because the proposed HQ2 was going to bring with it 25,000 new jobs to New York City. And restaurants and other businesses in the area were hoping for the ability to bolster their business. And I have to tell you what Alexandria Occasional Cortex said. She said this, quote, "If we were willing," because this is why Amazon was going to go to New York, because New York was going to provide $3 billion in tax credits to Amazon. Occasional Cortex said this, quote, "If we were willing to give away $3 billion for this deal, we could invest those $3 billion in our district ourselves if we wanted to," end quote. No, honey. Folks, the stupid is strong with this one. She doesn't realize $3 billion in tax credits doesn't mean that money will be in the pockets or the bank accounts of New York City. She doesn't understand that. And now the business owners there are upset because they won't be able to build with these new employees coming to town.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast do not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.